There's a whole set of theories around how we perceive information. Since the revolution of data visualization began, we've been looking to psychology to help us to explain to practitioners ways to improve our visualizations. We'll talk about one of these, known as the Gestalt principles. In this lesson, I will illustrate 6 of these principles, as there are more, but the ones I want to focus on directly relate to data visualizations. After this lesson, you will be able to apply them to data visualizations you build in the future. The Gestalt school of thought was studied in the early part of the last century to evaluate how the brain perceives the world around us. It's how we ought to organize our visualizations to be effective at conveying information. As there are 6 of them, we'll illustrate them on the screen to help us visualize them in our minds. The readings, of course, delve into much more detail. The 6 principles are 1. Proximity, 2. Similarity, 3. Enclosure, 4. Closure, 5. Continuity, and 6. Connection. Let's go into each of these. Proximity is when elements are placed close together, allowing them to be perceived by our mind as a group and belonging together. What you see on the screen is the perception that the image on the left is a group, while the image on the right shows the squares as separate because they're not as close to each other as the others. The best example of this in visualization comes from geography and mapping. And in the next module, we're going to go through an example of the proximity principle in some detail. Similarity is when we naturally connect things that look alike as being part of a group. This is especially useful in scatter plots with different categories. What you see on the screen is a scatter plot. The plus symbols are of one type, and squares and circles are of a different type. Enclosure is very useful at highlighting or differentiating areas of contrast. On the visualization shown, values to the left and right of the grayed areas mean something discrete. Those on the left are in one group, those in the right are in the other group. Notice how your mind's eye can clearly differentiate between the two groups. The next principle is a little bit more difficult to explain, so let me do my best. It's called closure, and it's the acceptance of the premise that people like to keep things as simple as possible as long as it fits the existing construct that's in our head. We can fill in the gaps if we're used to seeing it. The visualization on the left and the visualization on the right both meet the closure threshold, and the reason they both follow the closure principle is because our mind doesn't need the complete border or the axis or whatever to be able to discern meaning from them. So it's a very useful principle. We can also describe the continuity for the visualization on the right, and that's the next principle. The bar graph still works without any axis at all because the bars are lined up on the invisible axis. If there is a perception that the bars weren't lined up on the axis, then one would need to be shown. But in this case, they're all even, hence continuity. Last but not least is connection. Virtually any line graph describes the connection principle well. Things that are connected to each other with a line are related. So that was pretty high level, but hopefully a straightforward explanation of the Gestalt principles. We need to keep these in mind because these principles are how people see visualizations. If they seem basic, it's because it's really intrinsic to our understanding of visualizations and the world around us. So you can apply them to eliminate clutter and reduce cognitive load. So I'll see you next time.